Alright, today we're going to talk about a Detroit crew that was BMF before BMF. Let's get into it, man. Who we talking about today? We talking about Young Boys Incorporated, YBI. If you from Detroit, everybody from Detroit done heard about YBI, bro. So I'm going to give people from out of town a little history on YBI. And if you want to learn a little more about YBI, here's a book. Check it out. The Autobiography of Bus Jones, Young Boys Incorporated. Now, Young Boys Incorporated, also known as YBI, was a major drug organization in Detroit, Michigan, who were the first African-American drug cartels to operate on the inner city street corners. Young Boys Incorporated were innovative, opening franchises in other cities, promoting brands, and unleashing extreme brutality to frighten away rivals. YBI emerged at the end of the 1970s, and they used minors to traffic heroin. So basically, YBI was using young dudes to sell drugs because if they caught them, you know what I mean, they were so young that the police couldn't even prosecute them back then, you know? It was like uncommon to see teenagers selling drugs, you know, like back in the 70s and 80s. From what I was told, that was very uncommon. The drug game was like an old man game, like people in their late 20s, early 30s and 40s, like that was the dope game. You wasn't seeing teenagers selling dope like that. Meanwhile, the leaders, adults aged in their late teens and very early 20s, remained largely insulated from law enforcement actions for many years. And it was hard to catch them because they was using young dudes to sell dope. In 1976, the group formed of a bunch of Detroit neighborhood friends in their late teens. You had Dwayne Davis, Wonderful Wayne, Bernard Boykins, and Charlie Lindsay, aka Choicey Chuck, were the original founders at the time. Shortly after that formation, they grabbed some more members. You had Raymond Peoples, aka Baby Ray. He joined and he became a boss. And 2 years later, you had Bus Jones, aka Big Boy, who was paroled for prison and joined the organization. Now, you know how Detroit hustlers is, man. So you know how YBI, they started getting money in the city and then they went straight out of town with it. From the start, YBI main operation was the Dexter-Linwood area. About 2 years after its formation, YBI completely took over the heroin trade in Detroit, and their sales estimated to about $300,000 a day. After the split, Davis sent one of his top lieutenants to Boston, and they expanded their operation. And in Boston, they made $50,000 a day. The Boston and made $50,000 a day, took over the whole city. Now to its downfall of YBI. Organization in Detroit was seriously crippled in September 1982 when it's alleged that Bus Jones ordered an execution on Davis over a turf dispute. Davis was gunned down on the corner of Columbus and Lawton on Detroit's west side. A few months later, on December 7th, Raymond Peoples and Bus Jones and 41 of the top lieutenants of YBI was indicted. Now that right there was basically the end of YBI. Also had the Chambers brothers too, and I'm gonna do that video next. Sub to my YouTube channel, Shells Talk.